greetings and bonjour. Welcome to the unofficial PopCap PopCast, a podcast about the golden age of PopCap by a couple of fellas who were there at the time. I'm Steve Notley.
And I'm Isaac Aubry, and we're putting forward the unofficial aspect of this. We do not represent PopCap or PopCap under EA or any of that business. We are just talking about working at PopCap long ago, long before EA bought it or anything happened in that regard. And today we have a very special guest, one of the earliest of the early employees of PopCap.
All of our
Ace.
guests are special, but this one's especially
Yeah,
special.
yeah, I'm going to say it every time, the extra special. But yeah. Ace, as we affectionately know him, also known as Brian Rothstein, was one of the first coders at PopCap early on and brought us, well, Peggle, I think is really the big one. Ace created Peggle, which is a beloved game and is still talked about to this day, and many other games and little projects and things over the years that we're going to learn about today. So welcome, Ace. It's great having you.
Thanks for having me. It's kind of surreal because I've been listening to the podcast and I'm just used to kind of listening and I don't have to actually say anything. But now, after that PopCap podcast thing, I'm like, wait, PopCast. Now it's my turn to say something.
That's
That's right.
true.
It's like you're
Yeah.
having a dream, then you realize it's real. Like, oh, what the?
But now you get to say things and we will respond when you do. So
I know it is surreal.
This is awesome. Yeah, it's been fun, kind of reminiscing and thinking back on all the just great times that we had there. I've got a couple of stories I remember that we'll bring up a little later. Well, I mean, we'll have to frame in a certain way. We won't mention certain names. They'll just be, we'll just kind of vaguely talk about it. But I
We
think
don't want to get anybody in trouble,
we don't want to get anybody in
especially
trouble
ourselves.
or make them
yeah, well,
infamous.
yeah.
Or yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Discretion is our first and last and middle names.
but we still just love talking
Discretion,
about
D,
it.
discretion.
I've been thinking this podcast is sort of like the PopCast is where PopCap people, it's like the PopCap afterlife, where you go to discuss what happened and evaluate if it was okay or not.
Totally.
Maybe we need
Yeah,
to start giving scores at the end of each episode. We'll let people like rate their experience of PopCap.
Do you remember that PopCap reunion? How it was like a few years ago at a bar, and somebody made a gigantic chisel
Chuzzle.
for it.
Yeah, that was
And
Jeremy
outside the
Bylas made
bar,
that.
there was just some random women who were demanding that we give them the big chisel, like not from PopCap,
I think, yeah,
because
I
it was
think he gave,
it was their birthday or something.
yeah, he gave one or two of them away, but yeah, Jeremy did put a lot of work into that PopCap reunion, and it was and it went off like a charm. And we all just kind of like it was back in the day. We just got kind of blind drunk and just kind of dissipated into the night at some point without any real cutoff point. We all just disappeared at some
I think
point.
Eric got
Beautiful.
that woman's information and sent her like Eric Gaynor sent her a small chisel, even though she
Awesome,
could have the
awesome. So
large
you got the
chisel.
granddaddy, you got the fatty chisel, and then you got your
Mhm.
little baby chisel. It's beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. So yeah, let's kind of cut into it here. How did you get into gaming and programming, and like what is your origin story?
Oh, real quick, I do want to hear
Oh,
this, but just before we start, I want to know, would you call yourself a coder, a programmer, a developer, a
an
computer
engineer.
scientist, computer engineer? Like what term do you prefer for that for
I
this
always just
role?
call myself a programmer.
All
Programmer.
right.
That was
Okay.
the term I grew up with, and that's what I've always said. I mean, at some point on my resume, I started to put senior engineer because I think you get more money for that or something.
Right. I,
Programmer.
I'm pretty sure that for the title of this episode, we will call you what you are, which is a Peggle master. But in conversation, we could refer to the programming and program. Okay, so to Isaac's question.
My dad, I joke I come from like a long line of programmers, meaning that my dad was also a programmer. That's it. But he like worked on mainframes, like in the late 60s. He graduated with a degree in math, and they thought back then there was no like programming computer science major, and they're like math major, they can figure out how to program. So like he worked on the year 1970 problem was one of the big problems where they stored the digit only as 1 year. And when it hit 1970, it was going to think it was 1960. So he had to solve kind of problems like that. And, they didn't learn their
Wow.
lesson because they only expanded two digits at that point, thinking, well, that's plenty of time to solve the
Yeah,
Y2K.
this computer stuff will blow over.
But I remember one day my dad came up. Well, actually, he had these little teletype machines. You put a phone in these suction cups. That was the modem. and it would communicate with the mainframe at his office. And it was like a printer, like a dot matrix printer with huge rolls of paper. And I remember my sister and I would play games on it, like Hunt the Wumpus, where you would just give commands like go north. It's like the Wumpus is near here. But if you had to shoot, you had to figure out what direction the Wumpus was and shoot it. And it was all just text, just on a printer.
Well, so would you have had like a personal computer in your home growing up then, or
So
what?
this is what I'm getting to. Then one day my dad comes home like 1980, 81. He's like, check this out. I got this Timex Sinclair computer. It's amazing. You can attach it to a TV. It has 1 kilobyte of RAM. You can program it. And he showed me, he's like, check this out. He's like, watch this 10, print, Brian, 20, go to 10. And it goes, just prints my name over and over again. That's the only thing I remember doing on the Timex Sinclair. 10, print, Brian, 20, go to 10. Because I was only like 6 years old.
Right. And this would have been when around, do you think?
It's
Like
like
early 80s? Yeah.
81, 80,
Yeah.
81,
So I
82.
would have been a little bit older, but not that
Yeah.
much older. But that's when things like Apple II computers would start appearing in schools and so on. And like the rare person kid their family might have gotten a computer for some reason. And that was the sort of era where you could do things like there were magazines where they would actually have programs in them that
Yeah.
you would type into the computer in order to to code this program and then play this game. Like that's how you
Yeah.
play games is by typing the program into your home computer.
Oh, of course. I
That
remember.
I think that was
Yeah, go ahead.
Electronic Games Magazine, I
Yeah.
think. But that was kind of like, yeah, that was like early to mid 80s somewhere in there. I had a TI 99 that I was
Exactly.
That's the
then.
computer that really the Timex Sinclair. I don't remember much, but TI 99 4A.
And like the VIC 20,
That was
it
the
was
big
the
one
VIC
for
20
me.
was very popular in Canada because it was so cheap.
The Commodore 64. The Commodore 64 was really, that's where I got a little more serious. And I remember typing programs in from magazines and they would come. There was something you could also type in. It was like a little checking program like that ran it would show whether the line number, it would like CRC your line and made sure that it matched the line you were typing in. And they would put that in the magazine to make sure you didn't make a mistake at the end of the line or whatever.
Wow. Yeah, because I remember typing all that in. You go through pages of this stuff, and if you got one character wrong, it just wouldn't work, and it wouldn't
That's
tell
why
you
you
why
had
it
to get
didn't
that
work.
CRC program going too.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Man,
suppose
I
your
wish I'd
dad
known
is just
about
sort of
that.
like whatever. I mean, you kids had it so easy. If you want to know about torture, you should probably think about sitting there and having to punch cards.
He would have huge printouts of COBOL that he would bring home and he would just like go over them like in the study. Like
Reading
I
a
see
novel.
them lying around. No, I remember him being really excited. He's like, this is amazing, that you can have a computer at home, a home
Truly.
computer.
Well, yeah, it was like mainframes. And I mean, I was growing up at the time as well, and the science fiction of the time was about the computers would be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So the whole notion of, well, no, they would be getting smaller and smaller to the point that like every home would have a computer in it rather than maybe every home would connect to the giant mega computer that was like a mile cube
Right.
in the center of the city or whatever. So such a strange transformative time that was. But so let's skip forward a little bit and talk about how you got into the game stuff.
Yeah, so well, it's again, my dad, he thought we shouldn't buy video games. They're a waste of time, but he'd be like encourage me to try to program my own video games
Yeah, but if you
instead.
can make one,
Yeah, like right. So I would get games occasionally, or we'd borrow them from neighbors or whatever. But yeah, like he was not into like aiding me in my quest to get money to get
don't be a
video
idiot.
games.
Time wasted couch potato.
So yeah, I had to program my own, but it's funny. Like I like like little arcade games on the TI. I could remember programming like, things you have to move a block and avoid a block. But for some reason, I also I like those choose your own adventure books, and I programmed choose your own adventures, but they're super boring because I already know the answer, and so I'd have to make somebody else come and sit down and play it, and I just watch them, and I get enjoyment from watching them play. But it's kind of the same. I mean, even though I enjoy playing my own games to this day, I do get an enjoyment of seeing somebody somebody else enjoy a game that I've worked on, so I guess that's carried over.
That's kind of a holdover from the 80s too, just watching somebody else play a game. Like that was a lot of fun. Go to an arcade and watch someone really good
Oh yeah.
at Galaga, just go for it. It was a blast.
It's big now though on Twitch. People just
Hmm.
stream their
Yep.
gameplay.
I mean,
Still
It's
a
fun.
thing.
let's play YouTube channels are huge, right? So, and I admit there's a lot of times where it's like I don't want to put in the amount of time and effort it would take to learn to get good at this game, but I'm happy to sit and watch somebody play it for like a couple hours to get a feel for what it's like.
So what was your first kind of contact with a game company?
Yeah,
Uh,
so I had decided at some point, maybe I was 12 years old, I've suddenly occurred to me, maybe I could be a game programmer. First, I thought, surely that's impossible. But I consulted my mom and she said, of course you could be a game programmer. Why not? Oh, maybe I
awesome.
could be a game programmer. So, and I went to school, I majored in computer science. I sort of didn't think I was going to be a game programmer until I got to my senior year and decided I didn't want to go to grad school. And then, so I only applied to video game companies. Applied to three companies. I applied to Sierra Online, Activision, and Sony Studios. And I got the job. That was my first contact really with computer. I just sent out my resume.
And they're like,
And
oh, okay.
I Sierra and Activision. Well, I went and visited all three of them. I went to San Diego, went to Activision, I went to Seattle. Seattle was I'm like, do I want to move to Seattle? I don't know anybody here. I went to school in Southern California, but that's where I met Brian and John. They worked at
Mhm.
Sierra at the
When did,
time. They
Oh,
had
okay.
when
I
did you
didn't know
start in
that.
at Sierra?
1998, July
Okay,
98.
so you were there, and you were there that whole time. Like when I met you at Sierra in like
Yeah, I'd been
2002 or
there like
three,
four
you'd been there
years.
the whole time. Oh, wow.
Yeah, right. In
And
the
you,
World Opponent Network, the online portion of Sierra that worked on, just adding the matchmaking, like for
Well,
multiplayer games, you need to find players and chat and create games. That's what my group did.
I mean, I remember meeting you at PopCap and then learning on some time later that you had actually worked on the original Homeworld, or at least on the networking
Right, yeah, yeah.
for
And
Homeworld,
Half-Life. And Half-Life.
which was a real sort of like jaw-dropping, like,
If you
what?
if you
Really
ever
that? Like,
if you were ever playing Half-Life and you got an ES authentication error, that was my error. There you go.
just peeking into your
Um,
computer.
but yeah, Brian and John, they had gone to Purdue, but they dropped out to do their Brian Feet and John Vici from
Hmm.
PopCap, founders. They had started their own game company in college to do this flying saucer capture the flag game, ARC,
That's
right.
and
right.
they
That's right.
dropped
This
out.
is before they had even met Jason, then I guess, right?
Yeah, so they did that.
Yeah.
They were at Purdue, and I think John dropped out first, and Brian kept going a little bit. But then it's like Total Entertainment Network bought their game,
Right.
and they went out. That's when they met Jason because Jason
Right.
was the producer on ARC. How they got the jobs at Sierra, I think John's Aunt Allison like was neighbors with somebody who knew Ken Williams, or she was neighbors with Ken. I don't know. Like somebody knew somebody high up at
There's
Sierra,
a
and like, oh,
hookup.
my nephew is big into games. You should look into hiring him or whatever. And they were trying to get into online gaming at the time, Sierra, with the
Hmm.
Sierra SIG, Sierra Internet Gaming System, and what later became World Opponent Network. And so Brian and John have this internet game, and they're like, oh yeah, that'd be a perfect fit. Let's get them here. Although they didn't get ARC. ARC stayed with 10 for a few years until it went to Sierra. But anyway, so I went and interviewed it at Sierra, and I'm like, but I met them. And I'm like, I think I could move to Seattle even though I don't know anybody because I'll just be friends with them. That's what I'll do. That'll fill my social
It'll be
needs.
There you
fine. It'll be
go.
fine.
And that's how I became Ace too, because Brian, the name was taken, right? It was
Mhm.
used.
Right.
Do you have any nicknames? And I said, this is like a joke from Red Dwarf. I'm like, well, they used to call me Ace in college. And so that's how I got the name Ace.
Yeah,
But I've
awesome.
always known you as
Yeah.
Ace. I
Yeah,
mean,
no, no. Ace is fine. Ace is fine.
I would introduce you as Ace Brian Rothstein.
Yeah. It's just you start meeting like in-laws or something. You're like, you don't want to introduce yourself as Ace.
Yeah, I get
They're
it.
they're like, why Ace? And you're just like, because I'm better than you at video games.
My father-in-law would call me, just as a joke, would call me Spike occasionally. Just
But
some
you know
other.
that still sort of made its way into those games, right? I mean, like the Peggle games all have the A scores and
Oh
stuff like
yeah.
that.
I know I did that in Zuma, but I wasn't trying to because we had a par thing and then I was like a par time and then I'm like, well, ace is kind of a golf term. I wasn't really not
Right.
trying to in Zuma make it
I
like
could I
about
could
me.
completely believe that it was sort of an unintentional callback to your own nickname there,
Yeah, yeah.
but it just made sense. It's like, oh yeah, A scores, right? You just got to play through this game and be awesome at it, and you get the A scores.
It's pretty wild that I met you at Sierra. I think you were blasting the white stripes from around
Yeah,
the
I was gonna
corner.
say we were talking about because I had gotten there was something I was working on. It was kind of the culmination of what we've been doing in my group was we'd made these matchmaking servers and we'll make these APIs that games could use. You know, we made those APIs easier and easier, but what they really wanted was just to drop in a lobby. You just plug this in, go, does all the user interface, everything, and then hands off back to the game. So that was what I was working on at the time, and I'd realized at some point like my code was totally messed up, totally disorganized. So I went to my boss, Mike, and I was like, I think I need to rewrite all of this from scratch because it is going to be unmanageable. He's like, how long do you think it's going to take you? I'm like, I think I could get it done in 6 weeks. Because he's like, it's got to be done. It's going into, I think it was Empire Earth or something like
Oof.
that.
Oh, damn.
And so I was like, okay, and I wrote down my whole game plan, and I just went to work every day, like no, for 6 weeks straight. Like, I didn't take any days off. At some point, it was kind of, I'm like, this is good. I don't have any, every day is exactly the same, except for sometimes there's fewer people there. So on the weekends, yeah, I'd blast music while I was working, and then that's how
Yeah.
Isaac and I met because he was in the same kind of in the same floor, just a few
Yeah,
cubicles
we were
down.
like in crunch mode on Malice for the
It was
Xbox or something like that.
or
And
was it
so
a
I'm over there.
rollerblading game you were testing?
What one?
You weren't testing a rollerblading game?
Oh
Why did
no,
I?
thank yeah. There's some amazing games I went through. I did a little time on Leisure Suit Larry and Malice, and I think it was Malice when I met you.
That's
And
crazy that both of you guys were like seasoned video game veterans by the time that I met. So you guys were both at PopCap when I showed up in April 2005, right? And you
Yep.
guys were there in that very early, like maybe 2 dozen or so people phase, right? And again, both of you guys already had like years and multiple companies
No, for me it was just Sierra, just
okay.
Sierra. For the multiplayer group, we would work on all like we would have a little piece, just any game that had multiplayer, we would help add the matchmaking, the game organization part, the multiplayer game organization. So yeah, we would get in the credits of lots of things. The only game I wrote there actually though is Brian and I wrote a word game called Wordox. It was like Scrabble, except for you could take over other people's words. If you added to them, your tiles would go in your color or whatever, which was actually it was somewhat popular. It still exists to this day. I don't know who has the rights or whatever, but you can look it up.
I love
But
some of the innovation of early PopCap games and some of that early casual game work that you and yeah, Brian Feet and John and Jason all did. Just really cool ideas that I think that, yeah, still hold up today. And yeah, so it was awesome like coming over to PopCap and I was like, "Oh wait, it's that Brian guy
I
from
know I
Sierra. It's
remembered you
cool."
too. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
cool.
And you were and when I showed up there, I think you'd already started on you were helping with Insane Aquarium. Is that right? Am I
Yeah,
remembering that?
so right, George Fan, right, wrote Insane. I loved Insane Aquarium. I remember that when it was just the Java game. I would play that at Sierra, at work or whatever. And I think it won some GDC award that year or whatever. And then when John was showing me how PopCap got was going to publish the deluxe version, I thought that was this I think even before was it before I even worked at PopCap? He was showing me they were already working on that. I'm like, that's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah, George got a job at Blizzard, and so they were having trouble finishing in Sanaquarium, right? Because he had like a full-time job doing secretive work he couldn't talk about. I don't know if it was Start. I don't know if we ever figured out what he was working on, StarCraft 2 or something. I
Yeah,
don't
kept a
know.
secret.
You'll when you interview George, you'll get that information. So yeah, at Super Beer at some point, this is after Zuma, I was working on something that Jason had called Ace's Demon Dice. It was like a game I thought of as like you're dropping two squares that have numbers on them and they merge if they add up and I forget exactly what happens in it. And it was like kind of gotten stuck. Like it was okay, but not great. You know the drill at PopCap. You're like, this is pretty good, but it's missing
Yeah.
something. Like, what do you think it's missing? Like, I don't know. Like I tried putting like bunny rabbits in
Right.
it, or like we were trying to save. I remember Don Walters like he's always like that I have one bunny rabbit I found with a pancake on its head that was like you had to save it in one level, and he would always be talking about the bunny
That's like
rabbit.
Oolong, Oolong the bunny. If you remember that internet
though it's
meme bunny.
Oh, maybe that is what that was. I don't know.
I mean, it's sort of goofy, but it does to me speak to your sense of like that there's the difference between like a game you don't remember and one that you do is often not some special brilliance about its design or its code, but just some weird oddball thing that catches your attention, right? Like, I mean, we'll
That's
get into
funny.
this more when we get deeper into Peggle, but even so, it's just sort of like, oh, if you could just throw in some dumb graphic, like right when you're in the programmer art stage of things, but that dumb little graphic somehow gets a chuckle out of who's ever
Yeah.
playing it, then already you're kind of operating on the level of creating an emotional connection with the player, right?
People wanted to save those bunnies. I also thought it'd be good if there was some special line you make, a special series of numbers, your goal. And I remember spending hours trying to find the soccer announcer guy going, goal. Like, I don't know how long, but I found it and it worked. It worked, I thought.
Well, so
But
I want to back up briefly here. You mentioned Zuma, so like in one of our questions is like, did
yeah.
you work on the original Zuma or what happened there?
Yeah. Sorry if we're going out of order here. Is that
No, no,
okay?
that's fine.
Yeah, the Zuma, that was the very first day I got there. I was, my main job was to like improve the efficiency of the graphics rendering, like it was all software graphics rendering. And Brian was like, it's funny, like I got laid off from Sierra and Brian's like, sends me an email. I think he knew even before it was a whole multiplayer group was finally disbanded. I feel like he sent me an email before I had even known that that had happened and said, so I hear something's going down. Are you ready to join the good guys now? And then I got laid off. I'm like, yeah, sounds good. He's like, okay, send me your resume. I'm like, what? This is an outrage. Are you kidding me?
You know
Now I
me.
had to go work. Years later, I found out, I think this is true, is Don would be like, because Don didn't know, maybe Don vaguely knew me at the time, but just from hanging out. He's like, oh, Brian wants to hire some friend of his who can supposedly program. Like, we got to make sure he's okay. Make sure he sends in a resume and has real interviews. So I interviewed, and I knew, like, I was interviewing with Jeff and Tyson Seekbeer. I already knew really well, and it was kind of funny. But anyway, Brian had to write a whole list of like what's Ace going to work on, while he's here. And one of the
Well,
things was the improving the graphics, and I added the 3D acceleration. That's what I finally determined. Like this assembly optimization isn't going to do anything because it takes 50% of the time just to copy from system memory to graphics memory the contents of the screen. Whereas if you do it in 3D, it's always on the video card. So you could never do more than double the speed if you only use software like I did.
huh.
Well, that was after
Well,
working at
I
Peggle.
Some
remember
old school knowledge. That's
well,
awesome.
first I want to so who was like the main programmer, I guess, for Zuma at that time then?
Oh
Would
no,
that
no.
have been
So
Brian?
nobody was working on Zuma. So my first day,
Oh,
sorry. That's what I was supposed to be working on the first day in order to get to know the PopCap framework. I
ah,
think there was also a task for me. They were joking around. They already had some notifications in Burrito when I sat down. I'm like, what the heck is this thing, Burrito?
I mean the business of the hardware acceleration
Yeah,
because of course I remember well that era of PopCap games that were like 800 by 600 and you would crack
640 by
open the
480
option
even.
640 by 480 and then when you would pop open the options it'd always be that thing to go like use hardware
Yeah,
acceleration and
that
that's
that's
like
that was one of the things I worked on. Yeah, and like trying to tell whether, like there were some cards that were good, they're good to go, like a TNT or an Nvidia, and there were some like a SIS something that's like questionable. I do some tests and we'd warn you, like maybe you don't want to enable 3D, and then if you ran it again, you're like, was it okay? Are you sure you want to leave 3D on?
well, and like because now, I mean, you can get like Peggle off of Steam, but I don't know if that like enable hardware acceleration
It
does
doesn't work. There's a
anything.
bug in the code, but what you have to do is you have to hit Control Alt D and then hit Shift F8, and that will turn hardware back on. That's
Oh,
that's the
Oh,
only
really?
you
way to
remember
do it.
that?
Okay.
But I think there's a bug in the detection code for like newer Windows, and it'll claim hardware is not supported, I think. I believe,
Well,
Interesting.
in newer
we
versions of
will flash
Windows.
that up on the screen
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
try it out later, I guess.
So, but anyway, the first day I was supposed to, Brian had me, he's like, I want you to get familiar with, learn the PopCap, the sexy app framework, the library that they use for, that Brian wrote to make all the games, right? This is the library that lets you make sounds and draw and get input from the mouse and all that stuff and make buttons and dialogues and everything. So, and like they had a couple ideas for games, one of them, which was Zuma, and I'm like, well, that sounds pretty cool. Like I called it circle shoot or whatever,
That's
and
right.
yeah, the very first day, the code from circle shoot, which became Zuma, I wrote, I had the spiral growing and you would shoot. I
Did
remember
they
this
have
is
it called, was it called Zuma then? Like to me, that
nope.
would have implied that they would have already had some
No, 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 no.
sense
They didn't
of
call it
the,
Zuma. They didn't call it Zuma. It was
oh,
just the
okay.
idea of the balls on the
Oh,
curve
oh
and you
yeah.
shoot at it and it's a match three or whatever. And I thought the idea sounded cool. The other idea was some sort of fly swatting game. I'm like, I don't know about that. So yeah, I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool. And yeah, but on the first day, I think I had it basically working, but somewhere halfway through, I was working on it and I had like, I think I had a class called a bullet and I had these balls and I had a path. And I was showing Brian, and I'm like, "See, I got the bullet falling at the balls." And he's like, "What? What's the bullet?" I'm like, wasn't it supposed to be a bullet fires at the balls and then they suck back?" And he's like, "No, you're firing balls at balls." I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, I get it now." He's like,
Light bulb.
"Firing balls at balls." What's the matter?
Was Wally in the office yet doing art for
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah, he was there
Yeah.
before me. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So yeah, it wasn't called Zuma for a while. I just called it Circle Shoot. The magic of PopCap though is I'm programming it, like and I'm making these levels, I'm designing these curves, and it's Jason's get working with Walter to do this cool kind of, like
Well,
Mayan
this whole, yeah, exactly.
yeah,
This
all that and the
Mayan
frog.
South
Here's a frog. I
American.
think originally it was a dragon. And part of the problem I pointed out to Jason, the dragon was elongated and it stuck out. So the curves, because sometimes the curve gets really close, and I'm like, that can't work. It has to be more of a circle. And
Circular
Walter was
Right.
thing.
able to do like a very circular frog. But yeah,
I
so
wonder
the
where
magic is like,
Jason.
what's that?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I wonder where Jason, like where Jason and Walter came up with that whole, visual style,
I
right?
think
The
Like
Jason
tiki
had the
style.
the
Yeah.
idea
tiki
of he
style. Yeah,
always wanted to make a game called Zuma. He didn't know for what, but he thought that would be a good game.
I
I think
guess,
that's
yeah,
the
it's the
story.
tiki thing. I know Jason has always liked that
Yeah.
tiki kitsch stuff, so yeah, I
I
guess
think
it's
he
sort
was
of
ready
inevitable.
with that name and theme when
Yeah.
he just but that's the magic. Like I'm just programming it and doing levels, but then the art just starts coming to me. Like I have
Well,
to work a
right,
little bit, and the music and the sound effects is like here, put this in, here, put that in, and it's
because
like
I'm
boom.
imagining like Zuma from the programming perspective, where it's just like there's no art, right? These are just circles and representations of all
Mhm.
the lines of the thing and so
Yeah,
on. And so all of a sudden it's like, okay, now here we have this art, like this thing that up until now has just been a physics object that's a circle on a track,
I
now has
think.
to like be shown to roll along the track and
That,
stuff
no,
like
that was
that.
awesome. And that partly came from the 3D accelerator because Tyson actually gave me very early on, maybe even the first day, he's like, here's, I feel sorry for you. Here's like a shaded sphere and that you can put in, which I did. But yeah, Walter rendered those. I don't know if I'm trying to remember if we talked about it because this was only possible to do efficiently with 3D, which was a new thing that one of
Yeah.
the things I added, not even, it wasn't even there when I was first working on it because that I was doing so I worked on the 3D stuff and a few other things before I came back a couple months later. I'm like, okay, what is now I've finished these assignments. What am I going to do now? And it's like, oh yeah, I'm working on Circle Shoot or whatever it's called. But yeah, Walter rendered those cool marbles,
Mhm.
and but the three, you have to keep them aligned with the curve, the direction of the
Yeah,
curve.
yeah, because they're rolling. I mean, I guess I could imagine because they have like a light source of a sort, but they also have a texture on them that
Yeah, no, you
shows.
you just you just draw that animation.
Yeah,
You just rotate it to face whatever direction, and it looks right. It looks
yeah,
correct. But
Yeah,
you could
even
only do if you try doing that. I mean, these days you could, with 3D off, it would be fine. But back then, if you didn't have 3D and it was doing all these rotations, that was a slow operation. So it was slow. So if you play Zuma and you don't turn 3D on, the game doesn't do that spinning animation.
It's
It
just a
just draws
static
them.
image that
Yeah, and
rolls
that looks
around.
okay,
Yeah.
more okay, just moving
Hmm.
without
It's
rotating.
interesting that that tech carried on for years through Zuma's Revenge, and then even when we were working on Zuma Blitz, I had to have Wally like render out a couple new ball things, and he had to go dig back into all the
Oh,
old like the 3D
he had
program
some
and how he did it and
crazy
stuff.
old 3D program. I forget what it's named, like obscure, like that he was
Yeah,
really good
yeah,
with.
Bryce or something, or
Like
probably
something
pre
that would
Bryce.
allow him to sort of simulate a three-dimensional, like a sphere with a texture, and then output like animated frames of it or something.
Yeah, like any 3D program, but I remember his was like nobody else used it. It was just something he knew, he'd used
Hmm.
for a long time, but I don't remember what it was now. But he had some particle, says Particle Man or something like that he used for his cool particle
So
effects.
maybe I guess we did get out of order a little because so
Yeah,
you're
My
saying that
fault.
sorry.
Zuma was sort of what we started, but I don't think we really did everything we wanted to about Insane Aquarium here. We got more to say about that.
Yeah, oh right. So in Santa Aquarium, I was working on a failed game, which I think I'd called Dice Drop, and I always use boring name on the theory that that way it won't become the actual name.
Right.
Circle Shoot would never be the name of Zuma. Dice Drop would never be the name of Ace's Demon Dice, and nor would Ace's Demon Dice, and that game never came out. But
Right.
anyway, Super came up to me. He's like, George is busy. Do you want to work on finishing Insane Aquarium? And I said, hell yeah, that sounds good. I dropped Demon Dice and I got on Insane Aquarium. And like there were bugs in it. Some of the bugs came, and I only figured this out later because it was ported from Java to C++, plus plus, and Java
Mm.
has kind of an automatic garbage collected memory system. You don't have to manage memory yourself. And C++ plus plus more, you have to keep track. And if you delete something, you can't use it again. But I only came to understand this when I did the ActiveX version of Insane Aquarium, the web version.
Mm.
I decided the best way to do it was to take the Java version, which was the correct size, and like report it. And that's when I realized I'm like, now I understand so many of the bugs in this deluxe version because I'm running into
That's why
them
they're there.
again. Like if you're not careful. No, I mean it's happened to the best of us. I'm not trying to throw
Mhm.
shade on anybody. But yeah, so some of the stuff I had to do was like one of the big things like there's this virtual tank. You're supposed to be able to buy special fish. And you
Totally.
click on the virtual tank when I got it, and there were just like a goldfish and a carnivore, and maybe a color cycling goldfish and a color cycling carnivore. I'm like, I so we have to add more that you can buy, right? So we were just like brainstorming different fish. Like maybe there's a fish that swims backwards. Maybe there's like a goldfish that eats ultravores. Maybe there's, like a Santa Claus fish. Or the Santa Claus fish came because I had this I'm like, maybe there's a musical fish that sings songs. And I spent so long devising the system to play like the Windows Ding song to play all sorts of music, like, Chopin Polonaise or, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony or Grieg, Morning Mood. That's the beginning of Peggle. That's
Right.
the
Yeah,
East
yeah.
because Super was obsessed with that. He was the one. He's like, you got to put more Grieg Morning Mood in there. I'm like, okay, I'll get that in there. I think it had Ode to Joy too. It had a lot of Beethoven because I was working on piano playing the
And this is
Beethoven
Insane
Yeah,
dance.
Aquarium you're talking about here.
Yeah, this is in Santa Clara making songs so there would be musical genius fish that could play these songs occasionally in your virtual tank. And I remember Brian coming to me at some point. He's like, "How much time are you spending typing these songs into?" I'm like, not that much. It's important though, Like
it's important.
I feel like I was going in the weekends too. I was bringing my classical music books and like typing them
I,
in. And
I seem to remember, wasn't it Mod Plug Tracker that you were using for stuff?
No, I just made my own text file system, just where you type the note and the number, the octave number and stuff. The people have
Holy
made
crap.
all sorts of their own fish songs over the years
Uh-huh.
because they've reverse engineered, the format, which is not that complicated. I remember actually helping somebody about 10 years ago, like the fish song player. I gave it out, people wanted it. Maybe we gave it out to what was there? Was there like a beta board or
There
there was
was the
somewhere in
beta
the
board.
community?
Yeah,
Somehow
yeah.
somebody they had the player to play fish songs and it like broke or something, maybe for the same reasons that other PopCap stuff has started to break on
Gets
newer
old.
Windows.
Yeah.
And I helped this guy. I think I wrote a new fish song player I did. I wrote a new fish song player for this guy.
Awesome.
That's the level of service I go to for
When I was talking with Isaac before, when we were talking about like having you on, I mean, to me, your reach extends all over the place in PopCap. And certainly to me, for example, like when I was asked to do the almanac stuff for Plants vs. Zombies, I was in touch with George and saying, okay, well, how about like this or like this? And then he eventually was like, well, no, I just sort of wanted to sound like the way that it did in Insane Aquarium. And I went back and looked at that, and that was all your stuff. It had that
Oh,
kind of
right.
like that droll Jack Handy kind of quality.
It
And
was.
so it
I
was
had my screensaver was Deep Thoughts.
yeah, exactly. So it was like, oh, now and then it clicked. I was like, now I get it. Now I understand what you want, and I can write all that stuff out. But when I think about like the almanac stuff that I wrote for PVZ, I was channeling the voice that you wrote for Insane Aquarium, which I suppose was itself you channeling like Jack Handy deep thought stuff.
Yeah, I'd
But
written my own Deep Thought screensaver that came up with a different Deep Thought every time. I mean, from the actual Deep Thoughts. But no, I was happy George. I thought George. I was one. You never know, like because George is very protect. His characters have so much personality, right? And you're like, is he going to be okay with this? I just wrote them all, because what they were for, right, is for when you beat challenge mode every time. We wanted people to have a reward. I'm like, the reward will be learning the backstory of all the fish and aliens. Like, isn't that one of the
yeah.
ones is the whale? I forget what the whale's name was, but he had like some accident when he was like originally it was like high on coke. He accidentally swallowed all of the fish in his mouth and he had to go to rehab. But later it was changed to high on plankton. I knew that
Right,
the
right.
coke wasn't going to work out. But
Soccer moms were going to buy that.
George, I was happy. George liked it. He's like, great, no edits. I'm like, amazing, so
That's
happy.
awesome.
But we had to fight a little bit he loved the four, these four special pets you get, like this Nostradamus, the nose,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
this little dinosaur that throws wiffle balls. And they originally did like Zip. You would get them as bonus pets and they didn't do anything. And Super and I are like, I think they should actually be useful in some way. And so like Nostradamus we came up with he does a sneeze of power that makes the alien not come. And here's how it not appear. And the way I decided to record the sneeze myself, and I'd read that you could just plug your headphones. I didn't have a microphone. You could just plug your headphones into the
It
microphone
reverses it.
slot,
Yeah.
and I just did a fake sneeze into my headphones. That's the Nostradamus sneeze to this day.
Wow. Wow.
Well,
It's like the worst microphone experience you can get, but it does work.
Yeah.
really, I did not know
Yeah.
that. Well,
But we had to fight for that because George really liked that these pets were completely useless. Yeah, which I can respect that. I mean, like the nose would drop mucus that you could click on for $1 or something like that. And I think it would turn other fish into mucus dropping fish or something. The George's games are just like they're just packed. There's just like so much personality in them. Just everything about them.
But the ActiveX version of that was the first game I tested there before I went on to Pixelus. And then I think as I was starting to work on Pixelus, you went over and started Punch Patrol. Is that when that
Yeah,
started?
right. So Punch Patrol, right? That was I wanted to make like actually Nick Newhart, the bookworm guy, and I were both like trying to brainstorm new games. We were kind of working together on just trying different things. His was more successful than mine. His was Bookworm Adventures. But mine was yeah, Punch Patrol. I took because one of the bonus pets was Walter the punching penguin. You would click on the penguin and a boxing glove would come out of its mouth and it would punch fish. Originally, it did nothing, but the better powers would punch fish and they would drop coins.
well.
And
So no,
so,
I want at this point. I want to actually try something we've never done on the podcast before. I want to try a share screen.
do you have
Uh,
that game?
I do. So let's see
I
here.
want
Can I
to, but at some
do
point, Walter got replaced by a different character. Like there was a whole
share
concept we were
sound?
going to call it Walter, but then it got replaced by this other character. Oh my God!
Oh, that's loud.
Uh, and it's not letting me actually play.
Oh,
Oh, wait a
I
minute.
forgot this music that was in it.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on.
This is fun because we had everybody designing levels for this game. Like
I made a
bunch
bunch of
people in
them.
the office were making.
Well, and so and you can already see some of the stuff about like that idea of a thing where like it goes the pitching.
Oh yeah, right. You didn't have anything you had to punch in that level. What the heck?
Well, it's only the first
Oh, here we go.
level.
Punch the ice. Good.
Yeah, there's because there's no save
Yeah.
state game in this version. You always start at the beginning.
I think there must be a cheat sheet to skip ahead, or maybe L or something.
I'm not the best punch control player, so I hope you guys will forgive me here.
But yeah, the level editor I made for this basically became the level editor for Peggle. Some version.
Oh, kill it, kill it.
And of course, this music is from Star Control.
Oh yeah, right. I was trying to remember where that was from.
The
All right, I'm gonna stop the share here.
Okay.
yeah,
If I can.
it's really loud.
That was fun to see.
Yeah, I remember.
No, but did you work on like a bunch of people were just working on levels in the office for it?
Yeah, I made a bunch of levels for it, and I did make a theme song for it too. I've still got it. It's not that one, obviously, but I made an updated theme song that Jeff Weinstein liked a lot at the time. He's like, "How the fuck should you do that?" Yeah, I loved Punch Patrol. That was a really fun game. I was
Yeah, I
bummed
know.
it
I liked it, but another one of those games is like still kind of missing something. It's kind of still.
Well, and you can
What
see,
is
yeah,
it?
because like as I, because it's just sort of like, oh, each one's like a different level. There's different challenges. Like you're in the game, you're controlling now this. I don't know if you listened to our Pig Up episode, but in that one, I had talked about how different control schemes about moving your character around the screen in different ways. And one of the basic ways, of course, is you just pin the character to your mouse, essentially, right? Which
Yeah,
is what this was.
I think he swims to your mouse. I don't think he's all just
Yeah,
completely
it's
glued to
not
your
like I
mouse.
absolutely 100% pinned to it. He
Yeah.
follows it very closely, right?
Yeah. But
And-
When Pigs Fly, by the way, was one of the first, like that was the first game Jeff Weinstein worked on. It was like 2002 because I remember this. I think I was in the office working on my World Opponent Network lobby on the weekend. I get a call on my office phone, and it's John Vici, and he's like, "Hey, I need your help to make something, follow parabolic arc based on gravitational acceleration." I'm like, and I can hear
I
a
mean,
guy in the background. I'm like, I know how to do that. Why are you calling? He's like, I just want to double check. I'm like, add gravity to velocity every frame. John's like, okay, cool. Yeah, I think that's right.
So this is interesting. This confirms something that Steve mentioned in that Pig Up episode that I didn't know. I always thought Josh started when pigs fly, but it was Jeff, and then
No.
Josh was the second person to take it on, and
Yeah,
then do
and Jeff's was it was just you would hold down to make the pig go up. It was similar to a game that we were John and I were obsessed with called SF Cave, a very
I've
small
totally
web
played it.
game.
Yeah,
Yeah, you would hold the mouse to go up to add acceleration, go up, and you let go and you fall under gravity, and you had to navigate through this cave. Yeah, that
and
was
the
getting
walls would like
thinner and
slowly
thinner,
close
thinner
in
and
on you.
thinner.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that was the exact mechanic, I think, originally at When Pigs Fly is hold down to add force up, let go to let gravity drop you. But yeah,
that's
then it
awesome.
became the canon thing with Josh, I think.
Yeah.
To go back even further, sometimes I forget. I will say that I worked on an even older game, sort of PopCap related, called Foxy Poker, which
Oh,
was when John and Jason were first starting their game company. John
sexy
left
action, cool.
Sierra, and I think Jason was still at Pogo
Hmm.
at the time, but he was wanting to start a new game company. And Brian had left Sierra for like some Ticketmaster competitor, with just a guy from Sierra wanted to start a Ticketmaster competitor. So, but John, they were wanting to make this poker game, this video strip poker game called Foxy Poker, and John asked if I would program it in Java, and I'm like, sure, why not?
Oh,
Like,
that's awesome. I didn't know you did that one. That's
yeah,
crazy.
in his apartment. Yeah, we just work in his apartment, order pizza. I remember designing like the dialogue system where
I mean, it's crazy to think this is all sort of like .com
this pre.com
era
crash. That
like
was
stuff
pre.com
with like
crash, I
.com
think.
era
Yeah.
people kind of thing, right? Like
Yeah.
this is all late 90s computer not millennium,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
kind
Just
of
just the turn of 2000, like March
yeah.
2000 or something like that.
It's like, oh man, like it just turned 2000. There's nowhere to go but up for humanity.
Yeah.
Everything's gonna be
Yeah.
great from now on.
I remember John wanted to pay me, and I'm like, don't you pay me if you make any money off of it or something like that, So
It did all right for a minute, right? There was kind of
It
like a
was, I
certain
think it was
trend
on
maybe.
Maxim, maybe, like on the Maxim website. I'm not sure of that. Don't quote me on that.
That was
You
it
cannot
was
find a
still
version of it anymore, though. You can find it in the Internet Archive, but you can't find like the jar file with the
Mhm.
Java in it. That's gone, it appears. I've looked because people have asked me. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, we got to track this down.
That was still kind of being murmured about around the studio when I got there. And it was also PopCap, the name PopCap was still, just coming in. So the first couple checks I cashed were sexy action cool.
Oh, right, yeah, yeah,
And
because
yeah, I
that's
remember
when it
I'd take
was
him into the
sexy
bank
action
and
cool.
hand her my sexy action cool check and you just get weird looks, but it was uh
I got
it was
my
all
only
family
Royal
friendly after
Flush
that.
ever testing that game. I was testing it and just like boom, Royal Flush one time,
Let's move on if we can
Yeah,
to Peggle.
yeah.
Like now, I feel like of all the games that I worked on or touched or basically had anything to do with. Well, I'll even expand it. Just of all the games that have ever existed, Peggle is one of my favorites, and I'm so grateful that I got a chance to, be as close to it as I was. It surprised me. I'll say that. So the story I'll tell is that when Zuma came out, the following year we just saw endless Zuma clones. Like everybody just started. All these other companies were just making Zuma clones like Oasis and blah 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 blah. And because once you saw that Zuma gameplay, you just said, "Oh, that's a great game. I want to make my own version of it." And when Peggle came out, I thought for sure that same thing would happen, but it kind of didn't. There were a very small number of Peggle clones, but they never really took off. And weirdly, even Peggle itself, I think, is not nearly remembered as much as it should be, considering how I think it really is one of the truly great games. And I think so much of that just comes down to like how you manage to solve all that physics stuff. So just let's dive in. I want to really hear about like how the beginning of the idea and how it sort of developed.
Yeah, I mean, for about your being worried about people copying it, I remember anytime like I think PopCap was even trying to sell, early on while we were working on Peggle before it was out, and a bunch of people from other game companies they were showing, look at these great games, like somebody's gonna steal the idea. But thankfully they didn't. But and my joke is, yeah, it's obviously nobody could do the physics like I was able to do it.
It was a
But yeah,
one-off.
the story is I was totally burned out because Punch Patrol, I was into it and I really wanted it to work and we were having a lot of fun and people in the office were making levels and it's just like didn't quite get there as happens with a bunch of games at PopCap and it can be demoralizing as you might know. And so it's like, I just, I couldn't, I didn't want to do any more game design for a while. So I was just, because I'm like, I'm burned out. Just, I'm going to be your programmer. You just tell me what you need and I'll work on it. And Soup Bear for years had wanted to do some pachinko-like game. This was probably the third iteration of his pachinko-like game. I think Jeff went first, like maybe in 2004, and then I tried a version. We give Soup Beer things that could shoot balls and they bounce off and they go into the pachinko holes. So I think this was the third attempt. I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm gonna write a good physics engine. I'm gonna make a good editor. I started with the Punch Patrol editor, which was, everybody at work at PopCap was using it, so it kind of worked. It was, you could drag things around, you could copy and paste, you could put settings, and it was Super and John. They were big on doing because John had come back. He was gone from PopCap for a
Mhm.
while, right? He was
Making movies or
yeah,
something.
right.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
he was doing, wanted to branch out and do the movie stuff. But he came back and he and Super were big on, okay, we're gonna do this some sort of pachinko game. But the idea was always in pachinko, you just control the power of the ball. You fire balls, and I think you just only control how hard, like a plunger on pinball, except
Well,
for
and I
like a
think like
dial.
classic
Mhm.
Japanese pachinko is sort of a thing where you are dropping just a ton of balls at the
Yeah,
top
Cascade of them.
and they're
I
just
think they
bouncing
might.
all
I
the
think
way
they might shoot
down.
from. I think they might shoot from the bottom and curve up and then come back down.
But
All I
Maybe.
know is we had one in the fun room and it was the loudest goddamn thing on earth.
I the one
Set
that
that pachinko
Soup Beer
machine off and whoa.
the one that Soup Beer showed me is to introduce me to the world of pachinko was on MAME. It was something called I think Sexy Reaction Pachinko, some hentai pachinko game. I'm like, okay, I can see what's going on here.
like so the basic but like before the game became Peggle, it was just sort of like, okay, well, we're gonna find a way to make lots and lots of balls bounce around.
Yeah. Well, Super's idea was, okay, instead of controlling the power, you would have a shooter and you would aim the ball. But yeah, you fire a bunch of balls, you're trying to get them into holes, which are worth points. There's obstacles. There's like on a pinball table, maybe you hit three of these bumpers and then that gets a wall to go out of the way, and now you have access to this other location. And so the editor was important, being able to devise all these things and give them IDs and tell them, oh, these disappear. There's logic to make things move around based on, whether they're all lit up or something like that. But yeah, you're firing a whole bunch at a time. So one of my biggest problems was, how do I get like 50 balls bouncing around the screen and colliding with each other, efficiently?
But
And
also in a way where like they can eventually all come to rest on and not sort of like go nuts
yeah,
because there's like dozens of them all sort of going, I'm not sure if I'm colliding with
yeah.
the one next to me and stuff like that.
I
Uh,
solve the collisions like mathematically. Like there's a way you can kind of do something like ray tracing where like some people will do collision detection by like, I'll just move a little bit, and if I find myself colliding with an object, I'll react to it. But there's another way you can do is like, well, I know I'm moving this direction. I can find exactly where in the frame, like 0.28%, 28% through between frame one and frame two, I collided, and I can react right then. So that's kind of what I did with the physics. But then the collision is a separate thing. Like how do you check all of these? Like one way to check collisions, like I check every object against every other one. So if I have 100 objects, 100 balls, that'd be like 10,000 checks per frame. It's very slow. But I just discovered at some point this like algorithm called sweep and prune, where you sort them by their like endpoint coordinates, so their rectangle. And the thing is, on any frame, the balls barely move. So you don't have to really resort the potential collisions very much. Like it's very fast to update the things that could possibly be colliding, and they mostly stay the same. And so that it went really fast, which was like part of my block. Like when I'm finally getting to Peggle shooting one at a time, it's like, which I thought was that was the right idea. But then I'm like, that's so sad, 'cause now my collision detection's not needed.
I distinctly remember the day that you got that the all the collision working just right, because you're like, check this out, and you just have this hose of balls, and it just like
Yeah,
went crazy inside. And you're
it
just
felt
like,
good. It
well,
felt
yeah,
good.
and because like this is, I'm sure I'm kind of mixing up a couple of my extremely early, I guess ultimately pre-PopCap memories because when I was saying this to Isaac early offline, where like one of the things I really remember is Jason invited me just to come down to Seattle and meet the PopCap people, sort of in anticipation of me maybe taking this job as a newsletter editor. And at that time, I was hanging out, and so I was seeing very early versions of Peggle. I may have been like two visits and in, so like the first was in that sort of spray and pray kind of
Yeah.
hose of balls, which as I recall there were like three levels and you were just sort of firing, and like the gun could be at different positions and blah blah blah, and you were trying to shoot stuff. But then on the third level, that was when you had just dropped in, like the I showed up on a Thursday or something, and you had just dropped in that when you beat that third level, it played Ode to Joy, and like
Oh,
a clip art unicorn would go back and forth on the screen,
that
and it would
it
go
was
like
it was actually that was Soup Beer's level, and it wasn't Ode to Joy. It was the Ride of the Valkyries
ah.
you could
Okay.
play. But here's the thing. So yeah, originally it was the spray of balls, and it was like more like a pinball table. You're trying to score lots of points, and they're all like at some point I did all the physics, so I'm like I was, and I maybe I was unburned out, so I started to try to design my levels myself, and I designed things that were like, like skeet shooting. Their holes are moving, and you have to hit them as they're moving. Or there's like Simon, where the holes are a certain pattern of colors, and you have to hit them in the right order and keep the number of holes grows like with a musical tone. Anyway, all sorts of weird things. But Super came up with that level where it was like you lit up some pegs. That was stage
Mhm.
one, and then a bunch of holes appeared when you lit up all the pegs, and then you had to get all the holes, and then the flying saucer appeared, and there were pegs on the bottom of it you had to shoot. And when you finally did that, is like, or as the flying saucer was going, it was the Ride of the Valkyries. And when you defeated the flying saucer, his rainbow unicorn went back. See that arc, right? That's a
Yeah.
Punch Patrol arc. If you remember how you could define different movements in Punch Patrol,
Right.
that was one of the settings, like an
The-
arc of 180 degrees.
It was such a crazy. I mean, I that memory was so sharp just because even in this very primitive sort of form, where again it's like programmer art, so it's not even. It's just like rectangles and computer drawn circles and so on. But then just sort of playing this thing and moving the muzzle around, blasting all these balls around, and then just having a bah, bah, or like this blare of music and this goofy
Yeah.
thing like that fever moment was just so ridiculous and
Yeah.
yet people would like laugh and cheer and go nuts every time you'd like I remember standing there watching someone play and everyone just laughs and goes like, oh, that's awesome, we got to do that. It's like, yeah, it's a little over the top, we're, I don't know if we'd really, it's like, no, it's great, like we got to have that. And that ends up being one of the most wonderful things about Peggle is that, well, is that when you finish a level, you get this huge celebratory victory moment, right?
Fireworks,
Yeah.
it's over the
Yeah.
top. Yeah.
Right, yeah. No, Soup Beer, right. He made what I thought was the definitive level of that original game, which I had named Ball Blast. That see, I always do
Yes,
titles
like
that are
you've
The
just got the
Thunderball,
the,
remember
the
that I know will
Thunderball?
laser
never be
focused
used. Ball
the laser
Blast.
focused mind for titles.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
but I was starting to worry as we were getting to this point, like a couple months in, all the physics is done, the level editor. I'd even put in like John's like, we really need that Lua editor in there for, arbitrary game logic. Brian at the time was using it for helping with Bookworm Adventures. So they could script the bad guys to do something. And I'm like, oh my God, do you need that complicated logic? Fine. Fine. I'll put in the Lua editor. Well, I mean, Brian had already kind of made it, but I had to integrate it. But yeah, so Soup Beer had designed this really cool level, and I'm thinking, because in Zuma, I had so much trouble drawing all the curves and making them interesting. It took a lot of mental effort. And I was worried, is it going to be, this is like, seems like 10 times, 100 times as much mental effort to design every single level, cool level of Ball Blast. And I thought, maybe Soup Beer's onto something here. Maybe every level is like, you light up some pegs, and then a second stage happens, and then a third stage happens, and then classical music plays. So
There
I,
you
well,
go.
because what I want to say is like, and again, I'm sure I'm kind of mixing these stories up in my head, but the other thing I remember is a visit to Seattle. It might have been the same weekend in which I was like, I think it was John and Soup Beer and me at Soup Beer's place, smoking a bunch of dope, watching like crazy Michelle Gondry videos or something, and that was when the Peggle gameplay as we now know it had sort of suddenly come into shape where it's like, okay, so here's the idea is that there's, your gun's at the top, there's a bunch of pegs or bricks, maybe there's 100 of them, and you shoot the one ball, it just sort of traverses the screen, hits each peg, lights up each peg as it goes, and then those pegs are gone, right? And so let's say you've got 100 total pegs, there's 25 orange pegs that you have to hit, and you have 10 shots. And all of a sudden, it's like all of the sort of infinite potentialities of this ball physics system have sort of locked down into something much more specific, but now utterly brilliant, right? Because now it's like, okay, that's
yeah,
what this game is one shot, watch the ball bounce.
yeah,
And again, I remember being at Soup Beers where everyone was crowded around like Soup Bear's desk with the computer on, playing these levels that we had made with this very particular mode, right? So it wasn't a hose of balls.
right.
It was just like, yeah, but if you just have one shot, you have 10 balls and you got to hit 25 orange ones in a field of 100
There's your
total.
game.
And
Yeah.
every time you shoot, you're sort of chipping away at it. So now you're thinking like, oh, okay, like I'm gonna have there's a bunch of blue ones here and there's an orange one behind it, so I'm gonna have to get rid of those blue ones to get a shot
Yeah.
at that orange. Or maybe I could try to do a trick shot, from underneath, and all of a sudden like that Peggle wonderfulness just sort of like came into focus.
Yeah. I mean, it took a little bit of time though to go from Soup Beer's level. So right. So he came up with that cool level, and I feel like nobody was really lighting up pegs before. 4, he was the one who did that in that. I mean, it was possible with the logic or whatever to, change the graphic of the peg, or I don't know, something like there was
But
a
like,
way.
yeah, like to light up the peg and then remove it for the next shot kind of
Well, no,
thing.
but
Yeah.
that wasn't how it was originally. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try to follow Super's template. So this is how I remember it. I had a physics test where I just put down like 100 pegs, just to bounce a bunch of balls in it to test out how well the collision detection did and how efficient it was. So I took that level, and I think like I made a script that would just light up pegs, when you hit them, and it maybe give you points, right? And it made a special, God, how did this, now look at this, now I'm forgetting it. But it was mostly you just lighting up pegs, and we found that pretty funny. You get a score, like it would go up the more pegs you could light up on a shot. And
Well,
then,
yeah, like to interrupt, but like
yeah,
the scoring mechanism of Peggle has some interesting subtleties as well, where like each peg has a value. As you hit orange pegs, you're increasing the multiplier. So it's sort of like I get a blue peg's 10 points, a blue peg's 10 points. I hit an orange peg, that's 30 points. But that also put the multiplier up, so now it's 20. And so
yeah,
you're adding together all the pegs, but then the shot score is all of those individual
applied
pegs, the sum of all of their scores times the number
times
of
the number of
pegs you
pegs.
hit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that meant that your score could do these really cool things where it kind of go like dit 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 dit,
Yeah.
like
The
yeah.
thing was, yeah, the lighting up the pegs. I didn't even get to stage 2 and stage 3. Like we just I put some points in, and maybe I put the purple peg where you could try to get it would move around each shot. And we would just like Super Giant and I would just play and try to get the best score. And you could still fire multiple shots at a time. Like I put in, I think maybe I put a 10 thing limit or something. Yeah,
I
10
seem to
shot limit,
remember
but
that
you weren't
version. Yeah.
restricted. But we found ourselves naturally aiming one, watching it go,
Yeah.
and then aim another, watch it go. And then, and that's so we didn't just, that kind of happened organically. A lot of this just happened kind of like it was definitely not premeditated, but it's slowly
Well,
sort of, it's
It's
I
the best stuff, I
honestly,
swear.
yeah. I mean, I
Creates
honestly
itself.
believe that this is a case of Peggle being such a magnificently wonderful thing that it kind of already existed in some
right in the
platonic
platonic
ideal,
realm.
and it sort of chose you guys and us
Yeah.
and PopCap to be the vessel for its instantiation in this
It,
world.
No, it's so cool because that was my dream. It's like make like an original game. It's pretty hard actually
Yeah.
to make something that kind of like hasn't been done. Like you're not like this is just like this other game, or this is very similar to this other game. So I that was always like
Yeah.
a goal of mine, but I at some point I'd started to think maybe it's just like really hard. It can't be
Well,
done.
You know,
and two, I think I'll let you talk in a second, Isaac. I just want to get this up before I forget it, which was that I think in previous episodes I've mentioned how one of the things that was kind of controversial, but we eventually made the right decision, is there's kind of some people saying, well, it's you can't just shoot and then sit there and watch. Right? Like people want to be clicking all the time. Look at Insane Aquarium. You're always clicking on the fish and on the coins that are dropped. Click, 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 click. We can't have a game where you just click and watch. But that again is the brilliance of Peggle, is that you make that decision at the top of the screen. You can take all the time you want. And then once you fire, you've got a good amount of belief about what's going to happen when that ball makes the first bounce, somewhat less knowledge about what's going to happen after that second bounce, and then you're just fully engaged on the journey
Yeah.
of that ball to the bottom of the screen with all of its sort of attendant little surprises and disappointments and like oh
Well,
ooh,
I also think if
oh,
you have a
like
good shot, you're like, yeah, I basically planned that. And if you have a bad shot, you're like, ah, it's bad luck.
yeah.
And on that bombshell, we conclude part 1 of our extraordinary interview with Peggle Master Ace Brian Rothstein. Isaac, anything else to add as we go off into the sunset on this episode?
just saying, I really have loved talking to Ace, and the next episode is definitely not one to miss. You have to check this out. It just gets better and better. So, thanks, Ace, for coming on.
Like, subscribe, tell your friends, etc. And until next week, this has been an episode of the Unofficial PopCap PopCast.
Yeah! PopCap!